Zero, where we help people understand different pathways to get to net zero incrementally and to achieve certification. And my job is to help people and businesses understand the ways that the built environment can impact people, but also profit and the planet.
Well, I'm going to start by saying I'm born and raised in Peru, so sustainability was not in that moment a career option, right? So I started early in my career working in financial service as branch manager for retail and commercial customers and in Peru. And then I moved to Mexico to study my master in finance. When I finished the master, I entered again into the financial service industry with GE Capital, where I created the first eco-friendly mortgage in Mexico. That was my first step in sustainability. Then probably, you know, the financial crisis arrived and I was laid off, as many of us. GE Capital doesn't exist anymore in the market. But in that moment, I decided to take some courses in sustainability, eco-efficiency, and risk in terms of environment and social impact. And after that, I entered into technology at SAP, working as business value, basically connecting the business process, the challenge in the business process with the technology. And in the meantime, I started feeling homesick. And I created a company, I founded a company, Blossom Inspirations, that is an eco-friendly, fair trade company to support artisans in Peru and in order to continue in touch with my country. So the time came, and also Microsoft asked me to join the team as business value, as value advisor. And it was 2020, during the pandemic, that Microsoft announced the most aggressive goals in sustainability, to become carbon negative, water positive, zero waste, and to protect more lands that they operate. So it was 2020, and I raised my hands, and I create a value proposition in order to support our customers in sustainability, and here I am today. So I will say that the lesson for me was preparation, identify your strengths, right, in terms of how can you support your organization and to build and activate your network.
So for me, I spent the majority of my career working in human resources and did a lot of org design work, worked on a lot of culture transformation initiatives, and slowly but surely started picking up responsibility for our CSR or ESG programs. So I have been leading our inclusion and belonging work for CSAA Insurance Group now for about 10 years. And then I picked up responsibility for our philanthropic giving programs. And then I am probably the least experienced person on this panel when it comes to sustainability, in that I picked up responsibility for our sustainability work roughly less than a year ago. So I'm still relatively new in this space. However, my background in really driving culture transformation initiatives has been instrumental in being able to garner the necessary commitments across the organization to effectively drive the change that we're looking for across all those dimensions. We see a lot of synergies between the work we do in our communities, the work that we do for our consumers, and the work that we do for our employees.
One of the things I absolutely love about talking to leaders in sustainability is that their paths to their current roles are very rarely linear. And I feel like that's really well represented on stage today. Incredible. Well, thank you all so much again for joining us. We're talking women in sustainability, so let's get nitty gritty. What are the challenges facing women in sustainability today? Sonja, do you want to start us off?
Well, I guess, there's not a lot of women in leadership and sustainability. Speaking from my own perspective in the building industry especially, it touches so many different other industries, especially within the certification systems. And so, yeah, a lot of times you're the only woman there, or you're in a room full of, higher level people who aren't women, and it can feel isolating. It can feel like there's not a lot of sense of community. There's not a lot of role models to look up to, and so it can be challenging, especially if you come from a rural background like I did. There's other feelings that you can have that make you feel a little bit of an imposter sometimes, or a little, unsupported, I would say.
Rosa?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Honestly, what I usually see in the market is women's incorporate sustainability. We are excelling on that. However, there are many challenges, as you mentioned. Sustainability is broadly, and we have underrepresentation, for example, in green buildings, in green technology, in sustainable supply chain, in sustainable finance. And what I see also in terms of lack of green skills in women's, right? Just 10% of women in the workforce has at least one skill when in green skills, when men's has like 16%. So we need to empower and encourage women to work in sustainability in areas like, is dominant by men's. So one of the things that I was thinking for this question is, we always encourage STEAM careers, right? Science, technology, engineer, math to women's. But what about if we add the S to that in sustainability? Or we put the S as the umbrella team, because we need to start thinking with the mindset of sustainability. So all of those careers, but starting to prepare with the skills of environment science in terms of technology and business. So that could be a competitive differentiation for women.
Karina?
Well said. Well said. We know the challenges, right, as far as female representation in the STEM fields. But as you pointed out, oftentimes we come from all walks of life. And so I really think about, when I think about the challenges, one, I think about the pipeline. So where are we recruiting? And then how are we providing access and opportunity? So being a woman in leadership, how am I lifting people up? What's the network that I'm creating? How am I making sure to, shine a spotlight on the talent that we have in the organization? I think also challenging to some extent, what are the requirements that are truly needed for a job in some instances, or I think is something else that I know we're trying to focus on interrogating. I mean, I think when you think about it more holistically, the challenges that we face in this particular space is no different than a lot of other industries, right, as far as representation is concerned. So there's no silver bullet, if you will, and even more challenging, I think, in this space, because oftentimes, at least for many organizations, these are maybe single incumbent jobs. You might have one or two roles within an organization that has this responsibility. So limited resources, and then oftentimes you're in a position of having to influence without a lot of authority. And so depending upon the dynamics in your organization, and your ability to be able to, influence at that level, that could also bring additional challenges.
I mean, I would just add if you look at funding that goes to venture capital and private equity, women really do struggle to attract investment. So a little bit just to augment Rosa's point, where we may have women that are thinking and starting, having startups and coming up with some good engineering solutions in this space, they don't often get a lot of funding. So I'd say that is just a standard challenge. Again, more broadly across all investment environment is women don't attract a lot of investment. But I'd say one thing that does worry me a little bit is that it's kind of starting to morph into becoming a women's issue. And as we know, sort of like DEI as well, right? As soon as it becomes a women's issue, it's really easy to kind of ignore it. Unfortunately, it's just the way our world works. And I think more broadly, we do need, certainly within organizations, right? I think that we know there's a STEM challenge, but I think organizations too often, the people who are really being sort of passionate or evangelistic about sort of the issues that are going on in the world, and I mean environmental and social, unfortunately are often women, and it's really that group that tends to be disenfranchised or ignored. And I think again is a little bit to Karina's point was, as women in leadership, our role is to make sure that it doesn't become a women's issue, make sure that the male leadership and our counterparts are taking this on and recognize the importance from a business point of view, maybe less from an emotive point of view. And we kind of need to amend our language in ensuring that this becomes much more about data and less about adjectives. Because, frankly, there was that book in my era of, women are from Venus and men are from Mars. That still exists. We do have different vernacular and different language, and I think it is a lot of, unfortunately, up to us sometimes to use the language that we know is going to actually resonate with our male counterparts.
Thank you. So let's chat diversity programs. I feel a little bit of the elephant in the room, but they've come under increasing pressure over the last few months especially. Is it still important for us to be having those conversations? Is it still important to have diversity programs within companies? How do you feel about that over the last few months? Rosa, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I will say that diversity, I think that there are many studies that talk about how important is diversity in terms of better decision-making process, in terms of outperform, right? In terms of innovation, right? So especially in sustainability, that is a complex topic. It requires the collaboration, right? It requires the collaboration of individuals, of organizations, universities, and it requires a multidisciplinary team. So more important is for sure the part of diversity, the collaboration in order to get more innovation that we need towards net zero. So for me, well, and I'm the representation of diversity, I assume. So yeah, I think that we need more, especially also not only in terms of multidisciplinary team, but also in terms of gender, right? In order to have to move towards an equal sustainability future too. Yeah.
Karina?
Yeah, again, well said. I think diversity is a fact, right? We all come from different walks of life, different experiences that shape, our personal beliefs and value systems, and those unique attributes that we bring to the table. Again, over 50% of the U.S. population are women, right? More and more organizations are operating globally and wanting to attract talent from across the globe. Being able to create work environments where folks can truly thrive and where we're tapping into individuals' unique skill sets, I think continues to be a business imperative for all the reasons that Rosa spoke about, because we know that diverse organizations outperform homogeneous organizations, right? So how do we continue to recognize and value those differences, celebrate those differences, as opposed to trying to mask them or pretend that they don't exist?
Cara, what's your take?
I think this is an important time for self-reflection and to go, where did we go wrong? How did we handle this wrong? Because it was handled wrong. There's no question the backlash is a sign that it was handled wrong. And I mea culpa as well, right? It's this, I guess, inability to bring folks along. And the very swift backlash has shown that we didn't have enough people along the journey understanding kind of what the value was. And again, maybe, back to data, less adjectives, right? We brought in the data, I think, too late. I think later on we started, sort of in the investment world, we've proven diverse teams have better returns, better investment returns. And yet we didn't talk about it until too late, and I think we lost a lot of the relevant audience for that, and the allyship, right? So I think to me, what I would really love to see is that we start to let's reset, let's think about how we can better do this, and bring everyone along, even the folks that are causing the backlash. We need them, right? That's all we've proven. We absolutely need to have everybody along on the journey, at recognizing the importance of representation of every population, right? So if our general public looks like something, well, the company needs to look like something. So again, I just, to me, it's a really important time to start to just sit down and go, how can we do this right this time? Because I think we have a window, right? We have probably about 3 years that we can really think about what our strategy is going to be and how do we do this correctly.
Thank you. And Sonja?
So I had a colleague in a previous position. I think we were doing like a brand refresh, messaging refresh. And we were working the design firm on it. We had all these different examples for directions we could go. And for a lot of back and forth, she was like, these aren't gonna work. Like, our primary audience is wealthy white men. And I was like, it was such a moment for me to realize just how narrow our lens can be by default sometimes. And it's really important to challenge when those opportunities come up, because we need to bring everyone along. Our marketing and our leadership needs to reflect the real world, especially when the people most impacted by climate change are women and girls and marginalized groups. And so if we're not incorporating those voices or those perspectives into our marketing or our leadership, then we're really kind of missing the point there.
Thank you. Just want to remind everyone in the room and at home, if you do have any questions, we will come to them later. So if you are joining us virtually, you can pop your questions into the chat and they will come through to me. But let's get solutions focused, shall we? Let's pivot a little bit. How can we increase female leadership in roles? And I mean, this applies to sustainability, obviously, but it's also a lot broader, like we've mentioned earlier. So what should industries be doing to increase female leadership? What should teams be doing? How can we see more women in the boardroom and beyond? Karina, do you want to start with us?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to reflect on all of the elements of the system that are contributing to the results that you're seeing as far as representation is concerned. Starting with where you're pulling talent. Is that externally? What recruitment tools are you leveraging? What universities are you focusing on? If you're recruiting internally, so how are you building your internal pipeline? What does your hiring strategies look like? The makeup of your interview panels. Do you have a robust mentorship program within your organization? How are you thinking about and assessing, even looking at your performance evaluation process? So how are you assessing performance? Do you have policies and practices in place to ensure that you have a diverse candidate pipeline when you're going out to market to recruit for those positions? When you're executing your company's succession planning process, are you also paying attention to the talent that you are essentially grooming to be, your next phase of leadership? So I think, again, it's looking at all of those dimensions kind of in concert with one another to identify where you might have the biggest gaps or biggest areas of opportunity. It can sound overwhelming, and so I think in some instances it's just, you have to start somewhere, right? Even if it's with a mentorship program or if it's starting with a focus on diverse candidate slates.
Incredible. Like Glenn said earlier, we love an actionable point at Sustainability Live, so I hope everyone is taking notes. Cara.
Karina and I were talking earlier about flex working and working from home. To me, the upside of COVID was the recognition of how important that flexibility was, and particularly to females. It allowed for the balance, right? And we all know there is no work-life balance; it doesn't exist. But it at least allows us to run home to get to whatever we need to for our kids, and then quickly get on that Zoom call, right? Rather than having to miss one or the other. As we see, particularly in financial services, but I'm sure in other industries as well, there is a real push for everybody to get back to the office 5 days a week. I know unequivocally, if we do look in 2 years and we start to look at the numbers of females in that sort of that mid to upper level ranks, women are going to start to stay home again. And I mean leave the workforce. So I think the importance of working from home, the ability to do that, entrusting your sort of more senior females to actually get the work done. And I do understand the arguments about the juniors. They need connectivity. I get that. I'm talking about that mid-level where you really do lose a lot of women, the ones who are having the families. And even if they're not having families, they're recognizing that they want to have a life as well. So I think that's a critical point to make sure that companies are being mindful of how they're handling that. And then also when women are away from the office, that there isn't sort of this bro culture that ends up growing, meaning that everyone's going to go golfing again, and the ladies that are at home looking after their kids and after work aren't somehow being, not take advantage of that camaraderie and that networking that men do have the ability to do so much. I just think we just need to be a lot more mindful. And I know I'm focusing just on gender. Frankly, gender is just the easier one, right? And I leave the other issues are even more complex.
Sonja.
For me, everything kind of comes back to storytelling. So I think it's really important to, when you see yourself reflected in someone else's story, you begin to envision other pathways and other choices you can make. You can see obstacles and role models and really sort of envision different futures for yourself. So I think it's really important to center stories of female leadership for that reason, exactly, so that people kind of coming into sustainability or trying to figure out how to develop their career within sustainability can see those different pathways. From a more practical standpoint, I would say to be an advocate and be a champion for women in sustainability in their careers. So not just inviting them to the table, but really empowering them to make decisions and shape ways that the company operates.
And in terms of advocacy, thanks everyone for joining us. It's great to see such a full room. Rosa, do you want to round us out on this one?
On balance, or in terms of recommendations for leadership in women's position?
Both. Take it away.
I think that all of us have said many different things that I completely agree. Like first, as I mentioned at the beginning, in terms of attracting more women in sustainability is to integrate sustainability and promote sustainability into the STEAM careers. But also the mentorship that you mentioned, the role model. There is not so many women, right? So the mentorship, the peer community, your network is going to be important in order to address and to work also in sustainability. The other thing is be prepared. I think that you, Cara, also mentioned in terms of funding for women, right? The participation of the governments, NGOs, universities in order to offer funds to women in terms of green leadership. That is something that is important too. And also an inclusive promotion, right? So when we are promoting that the promotion is equal for men and women, right? So that is something that is going to help also in terms of sustainability and for more equal, sustainable future too. In terms of balance, I think that, and I have two girls, right? So for me, it's kind of difficult because I love what I'm doing in terms of my professional and my personal life. In sustainability is for the first time that I bringing all together, personal and professional, and trying to cultivate that in my girls. So the way that I usually trying to disconnect or distress, right, is swimming and also educating also my girls on that. Like basically the well-being is look for something that gives you your peace or where it can be your sanctuary. In my case, is the swimming, is the way that give me the time management, to understand what is, to plan my day, my to-do list, also to refresh and stay focused. So find some sport that can bring you well-being and that you identified and where you can, refresh yourself. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm going to give the room an opportunity now to ask a question before I get another one in. If anyone has a question and would like to put the hand up, I can come and get a mic out to you. We've got some over here. Have you got? Yeah, brilliant. So Tom will come over and grab a little microphone over there.
This one on the left, too. This one on the left as well.
Hey, thank you. So Sonja, earlier you said that women are like more affected by climate change than men. I was wondering if you could expand on why you feel that way, and if anyone else wants to answer as well.
Sure. There was a UN or United Nations report that came out, I want to say like 2 months ago, that really dived into the different ways that women are impacted by climate change and girls too, globally, but also in the US. A lot of times, issues are intersectional, and the ways that climate change can impact women, it increases the poverty rate, it increases access to food and water, clean air, various ways. I'm probably missing like a list of like 12 other things, but I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that point.
Yeah, I will add we always multitasking, right? So we are in home and also working. So access to water, for example, in vulnerable communities is a problem because the person that goes there are women. The women are the ones that also are going to look, especially in marginal communities, right? The woman is the one that take the food out of her mouth to feed the kids. Right? The man is working for sure, but honestly, women has to look for herself and also for the kids. So especially in vulnerable communities. So looking for different ways to access to food, food security, water access, right? The way that they cook the food, many times they don't have the energy, right? The electricity. So that is impacting, right? So I don't know if somebody want to add.
I'll just add in, also in rural communities, it's typically the women that'll go to market to sell whatever goods have been produced at home. And inclement weather and climate change can drastically impact them. So our sister company Marsh has even developed Blue Marble, which is an insurer that specifically works with these very, very small enterprise. It might be one lady, it might be 3 or 4 in these areas to protect them if there is weather that can't get them to the market, right? They actually physically can't get there. That will cover them for the loss of sales. So there is a clear connection between the impact on women and climate change. It's just, lots of examples.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? I feel like there was one at the back there, Tom. Thank you.
So my question is for Cara specifically, but anyone can join in, please. What does a women-inclusive corporate sustainable company look like now and for the future?
Well, that was a small question. So, I think I've been really, given the political environment, I've been really happy to see the organizations that have stood up for diversity, broad diversity, so not even just gender. The ones that have said, and I won't name them, but you can Google it and you'll probably see it in about 2 seconds. But the ones that have said our customer base looks like X, so we will look like X. The ones I think, the companies that are doing it right are the ones where it's coming directly from leadership. It's not sitting over with, and I'm a huge advocate of, a global head of DEI. Like, absolutely, those roles are important, but that role most likely needs to report to the CEO, and the CEO needs to be the person that wanted them there, right? So it can't be the board that said you need to have this. And I even look at our organization, and we had an incredible CEO. She happened to be female. But it was core to her beliefs that we really needed to ensure that we were an inclusive society. She happened to be Canadian too, I'll throw that in. But it was things like returnership programs, making sure that women were coming back that mid-level. For those of us that are the female senior partners, we had our own venue where we actually would just get on a phone call and talk about opportunities. And it turned out what most of the senior women wanted was, we wanted to be able to change jobs every few years. We want to be thrown completely different opportunities. And Mercer happened to be doing it right, but not sort of thoughtfully. So we decided to make that a little bit more of a thoughtful approach. So I am a huge believer in that if the boss doesn't buy it, it's not ever really going to happen, and you're not going to be able to keep your diverse community engaged and happy at that organization. We see it way too often that there's terrible turnover, and it's just because it's not authentic. It's not really coming from leadership, and they make a huge difference. They really do.
Yeah, I would just add, I couldn't agree more. The tone at the top is critically important. And for me, it's not just about championing diversity and inclusion. It is important to focus on tangible results. So the things I would look towards if I'm looking to see whether or not an organization is focused on inclusivity would be to look at overall representation, and not just at the front line, but at the senior leadership levels. Are you seeing a balanced representation there? And then looking at things like engagement, right? So most organizations have some type of employee engagement survey to assess employee satisfaction. So, and we look at those results across a whole host of dimensions, tenure, but gender and other demographic dimensions of difference we also pay attention to. Turnover is also something, are you able to bring that talent in, but they're quickly leaving out the door because they're not feeling as though they work in an environment where they can be successful. We also do pay equity results to ensure that, we're focused on paying employees across the board fairly for their contributions to the organization. So those would just be a couple of the typical KPIs that we all look at and measure to assess the overall health of our business, but also thinking about that from a diversity lens as well.
Yeah, I will say something. Honestly, I like your approach, and what you are saying is basically put sustainability at the center of any strategy that we have in the organization. And I think that sustainability could be the person that could pivot that information, that data that you have, that KPIs that you have to the whole organization and engage with the whole organization, bringing the information, the strategy, the different initiatives to the finance area, to the human resource, to the procurement area, and in that way creating like the sustainability centricity instead of just being sustainability as part of just a report or a compliance. So that is the way that I see sustainability should be evolving, right, in the organization.
Brilliant, thank you everyone. It is a rainy morning in the Windy City, so we are going to slightly over on this session because we started a bit late because of the traffic, but don't worry, we won't eat into the networking break too much. Have we got a question? I feel like there was one over there.
Hi, thank you all for an excellent panel, first of all. So we all know the old saying, hopefully gone saying, of, little girls should be seen and not heard. And it reminds me of what's going on right now with green hushing. And I wonder if, as women who also have struggled to be heard in meetings, to, you say an idea, somebody else says the same idea, they're heard, you're not heard. What tactics as women can we take away from our own lived experience in this environment of green hushing to try to make sure that the messages that need to be communicated about sustainability continue to be communicated?
Well, I'll jump in. I don't care if I don't get the credit, as long if my colleague who seems to be listened to more repeats what I said and people listen, I'm happy with that. But again, I'm old, right? So I've just been around a long time. If I was, I think, a 35-year-old, I've got to go get them, maybe I wouldn't be so calm with that. But as long as the message is out there, I'm personally am perfectly happy.
Did anyone want to add anything to that?
Yeah. What I notice is that we are rechanging or adjusting our message. But the thing is that everything that we do, every decision that we take, we have to start looking with what is the impact to the planet, to the society, and in terms of our values. So I think that it's important to recognize that any initiative in the organization has three types of values: for the business, for the environment, right? And in terms of sustainability to the society, right? So it's something that we should start talking and, hey, yes, there is some business value here, some business transformation in terms of optimizing costs, in terms of mitigating risk, in terms of revenue, but additional to that, we are reducing emissions also with this initiative. So trying to look with the lens of a sustainability mindset, right? I think that is what we need in order to educate ourselves and also the next generation.
Yeah, I would just add, I know that we live in interesting times, and we have to somewhat be adaptable to the changing environment that we're in, and at the same time continue to remain authentic and true to who we are and the values that we espouse. One of the things we often talk about with our leadership team is the negative impacts that can result if you are seen as being inauthentic and more performative in this space. So I would say that's some of the conversations we've been having. So it's important to make sure that if you're conveying certain messages about what you believe and your company values, that you're able to point authentically to the actions, behaviors, and policies and practices. Again, because the negative backlash can also be just as detrimental on a business brand. So,
and I would add, when companies or people are concerned about greenwashing, green hushing, because I work in the certification space, they say, well, get certified. Get a third party to say, yes, you did it. We'll take some of the blame if it's not up to whatever requirements you're going for. And I think in a company as well, kind of what you're saying about going back to your values, you need to have something to fall back on to kind of validate and really communicate what you're standing for. In a similar way that a certification can kind of prop you up a bit there.
Thank you, everyone. We are running a little bit tight on time, but I feel like there was a question in the front row over here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for talking to us. My question is, what advice do you have for young professionals in the sustainability field? Thank you.
If we can keep it to maybe 30-second answers, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
I'll jump in. Just I often will have somebody's daughter or son who's just graduating or something, and they want to get advice. Sadly, I say for the most part, don't work for a large organization. because they are balancing, and when I mean large, I mean publicly traded. The pressures, particularly for a U.S. publicly traded company, are intense. So I think if you're really passionate, you want to go work for an organization that is maybe able to have the authenticity at leadership, right? That they don't have to make the trade-off. There are obviously exceptions. Rosa's organization. There have been certain publicly traded organizations that have really made an incredible stance and are ignoring the noise and seem to be performing just as well. And then just be very careful that you don't end up in a reporting role, right? Because you could end up in a very large organization, and what you'll find yourself doing is pretty much just the reporting stuff. So normally you've gone into this field because you're passionate about something, you will die a pretty slow death if that's the area you go into. If you love reporting, then by all means do it. But anyway, that's usually my feedback.
I will say be open and flexible, because sustainability continue evolving, the regulation and the reporting continue evolving, right? But most important, be prepared also in terms of the fundamentals of sustainability. Sustainability development goals, circular economy, environmental science, right? And also, as Cara mentioned, corporate sustainability, I will say that, it's a topic that everybody manages, but the real important opportunities are in renewable energy, sustainable finance, sustainable supply chain, all right, green technology. So decide what is the topic in sustainability that you want to focus on. And basically be prepared, know your strengths, and how are you going to support the organization with your strengths.
To Rosa's, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, to Rosa's point, I would say be comfortable just being a beginner all the time. There's a lot of acronyms. There's a lot of terms. Don't feel like you need to know everything, because nobody knows everything. And it does change so often. And so just be okay with not knowing everything and not being perfect and learning along the way.
Yeah, the last thing I would add is just network. So build relationships across the organization. So I think Rosa may have talked about the vision of embedding sustainability in all aspects, right? That lens in all aspects of your business operation. And the best way in which to do that is really to understand your business at an intimate level and the connections with sustainability. And so, at least in my experience, I have not been able to be successful if it were not for the relationships that I've been able to cultivate across the organization. So that would be my one piece of advice. And that's easier said than done, coming from someone like me who's an introvert. So it takes real intentionality to actually build those relationships, maintain those relationships, and then know when and how to leverage them.
Thank you so much. What a perfect question, I think, to end this session on, the first session of Sustainability Live Chicago. We are about to go into a networking break, and then at 10 o'clock, I will be joined on stage by George Dodd, Associate Director, ESG Business Development Leader at Kyndryl. But in the meantime, please join me in raising a hand to our incredible panel here. Karina, Cara, Sonja, and Rosa, thank you so much.